Hi guys, how are things? It's been a while. We are back to you today. I suppose we're going old school, and I want to have a chat with you about, well, really what are the differences between bushcraft and survival, and a bushcraft knife and a survival knife. So things have gone a little bit skewed in the world that we live in now, in terms of what is a survival knife, what is a bushcraft knife, and any knife you have on you is a survival knife. Well, that's kind of true when you find yourself in a survival scenario, but we must understand what is a survival knife. And for my definition of a survival knife is, it's not a one tool option, it's a one tool no option. So nobody goes out into the wilds with the anticipation of finding themselves in a survival scenario, and as a result of that we need a knife on us that can fit the tasks that are required in survival. Now, this whole video has arrived today because of a conversation that I had with Gary Doyle yesterday, my brother Gary Doyle. Hey Gary, how are you? And you know how things have changed over the last 20-30 years in terms of survival and bushcraft. And I think that survival, although maybe something that people think of a Hollywood idea or something like this, but what we must remember is survival is very, very important. And when I teach people survival, it's vitally important that they are prepared for what could lay ahead of them. Nobody comes to me with the anticipation of doing a survival course hoping that they're going to have to use their survival skills. But make no doubt about it, it's very, very serious business, and the people that may have to call on these skills at any given time, and I hopefully they never do need to call upon them, they need what we call a survival knife, not a bushcraft knife, okay? Because its function is not just to carve wood and make spoons and make forks. Now, I don't mean to be flippant and to degrade bushcraft or anything like that, but most of the people that teach bushcraft could be excellent survivalists, but maybe their bushcraft knife is just one piece of a triangle of tools that they use. So they probably have a saw with them, maybe even larger than this, or possibly a bow saw, and more than likely an axe. And when you have this trifecta of tools with you, firstly, you're probably not going to find yourself in a survival scenario with those three tools. You're going to find yourself in a wilderness living scenario that maybe you didn't account for or plan. But I would ask you this: who goes canoeing or mountain biking or out for a hike with an axe, a saw and a bushcraft knife? Very few, I would say. Or out hunting for that matter. But someone could take a knife like this on their canoeing trip, or they could take a knife like this going out hunting. Indeed, I have dressed many a deer with this. I've gutted deer, you know, grollocked deer, skinned them and butchered them out with this very knife. I have oh my god, hundreds of rabbits I've punched with this, squirrels, I've gutted fish. You know, this knife pretty much does it all. It's a bit of a tank, all right, but it's not really a super big knife. 5 1/4 inch blade. It's the SE5, guys, if anyone's wondering. Now, the grind on this is not your typical bushcraft knife. It has a saber grind. Now, this is going to divide opinion an awful lot, but I would go so far as to say that a Scandi grind, although the most probably superb full flat Scandi grind for carving wood, in particular softwood, it's not the best grind for any kind of game preparation, because once it comes in contact with bone, it chips. Now, the other problem with a Scandi grind, and I'm not hating on Scandi grinds, but one of the big problems is, although easy to sharpen because you find your bevel, that wide bevel, and you just maintain that bevel, although easy to sharpen, it takes an awful long time to sharpen. Because the bevel is probably an inch in width, you have an awful lot of material to remove before you create a burr on the other side. Whereas something like this that has this tiny secondary bevel, if you learn how to sharpen it, it sharpens up much quicker and is really easier to sharpen in the field. Now this is 1095 steel, and it can happily digest this kind of, I suppose, wrist thick type material. In actual fact, nothing battens quite like the SE5, I think, and it is a true full tang knife. You can see it's working its way down through here. Now, this is softwood, because softwood is what we're going to want when we're making a fire. But here's the thing, softwood comes with its own problems, and although soft, yes it is, what does most softwoods have in common? They're extremely fast growing. And what does that cause? An abundance of knots that we have to ultimately find our way through. Now, I would say that what determines what survival knife you should have on you is not what your favorite person on the other part of the world is using, but the environment. Our bioregion determines what we need out of a survival knife. So maybe if I was in a very arid area, I wouldn't pick something like an SE5. Maybe I would pick something different, and maybe I wouldn't even need a full tang. But in Ireland, what we need in this bioregion is an extremely stout, strong, unbreakable knife. Now, survival scenarios are what we call a non-resupply event. So it's not like going off into the woods with your kids with your Mora clipper, making a fire and breaking the knife while you're preparing marshmallows to toast over the fire for your kids. It's not really a crisis, you know. You go back to the shop next week and buy your 15-16 euro clipper, and you're back in business. But if I'm caught in the woods and I'm not appropriately dressed, we're in a situation should that knife break. Your knife is your life, and I know that that's a term that's used and it's people, you know, it's almost flippant at this stage, but this is the truth. This is what keeps you alive. This is, what is this? This is shelter, this is fire, this is warmth, this is water that has been boiled and ready to consume. This is food preparation. Now, they say that a knife should be able to carve a net needle. Well, this very knife carved that net needle. Okay, so it can do that. Will it do it in 5 minutes in the way that a more classic will? No, it won't. Of course it won't. It's a 1/4 inch thick 5-inch blade, but it will do it. With this knife, it's a very simple design. We have no quirky edges like that you would have on a Tom Brown tracker or something like that. Now, I'm not hating on Tom Brown tracker knives. They're a fantastic knife, but they do present a lot of problems in terms of field maintenance. So I would say that this is akin to being almost the ideal perfect survival knife, at least for this Irish region. Now, it does come with a few disadvantages. This knife doesn't come with a 90-degree spine, so you have to put one on with a file yourself. But it's not such a problem to do that. And alternatively, with your Kydex sheet, it comes with a great Kydex sheet, break off a bit of hacksaw and duct tape it to this, and you have something that will scrape ferro rods if you don't want to go down that road of doing that. I would say that, and this is a discussion that I was having with Natalie today, my wife, that, you know, when the chips are down, we've no interest in mamby-pamby devices, okay? And we don't really care that your 1,000 euro Bushcraft knife that has 2,000-year-old woolly mammoth tusk on the handle, we've no concern about that any longer. This is a tool, and a tool to keep you alive. And if you choose the correct survival knife, and we must ask ourselves, what is the correct survival knife? Well, in my thinking, the correct survival knife is the one that doesn't break, because we must ask ourselves, what are the consequences should you find yourself stuck in a situation? And, you know, forget about your brand kind of people honour brands and they're very loyal to particular brands, and that is fantastic, okay? But we must ask ourselves, if I find myself in a survival scenario tonight, we're coming towards the end of November, and this tool can't create enough firewood to warm my feet and my fingers, what are the consequences of that? What are the consequences of your knife breaking? Does your knife have to be absolutely shaving sharp? No, it doesn't. Now this is sharp, right? But I don't stay at home all the time cutting newspaper. I do cut my fair share of newspaper, but I don't stay at home in my sitting room cutting newspaper and shaving my arms. This knife has to get out into the woods, and it has to work, and it has to do the things that I need it to do. Now, there are similar knives to this on the market of the same size, that when you remove this micarta slab, there are large lozenges of steel that have been removed, skeletonized tangs. I avoid them like a plague. This, if I were to take the handles off this, all you have is 1, 2, 3 holes in the tang, and everything else is solid. This knife, and I have no association with SC whatsoever, other than I really like this knife, and I think it is about perfect for this environment. But like I said earlier, there's a certain hippy dippy element that has gotten into survival and bushcraft, and it has dirtied the water. We must not lose focus. Now, and I believe in a spiritual existence in the forest, I certainly do, but we must not lose sight of the consequences of our primary tool failing on us in a survival scenario. And that's why I say, if you're not getting this knife, ensure you're going to have a knife that won't break in a scenario of survival. And before I go, and I teach this to my students all the time, what we must remember, in the event of a survival scenario, which I hope none of us ever find ourselves in, but in that event, right, we will be glad that we have a knife that won't break, because our fine motor skills take a huge dive. Okay, our fine motor skills now become very, very questionable, and this is when tools become broken. And when your knife breaks in a survival scenario, and there's psychology reports to support this, when a survivor's survival knife breaks, their morale takes a huge dive as well, and it's very, very hard, and it's hard for them to get over that, and it has a huge negative impact on their moral fibre. So guys, I always say, pick your survival knife in the same manner that you would pick your parachute that you're going to jump out of a plane. And no one wants the most lightweight parachute. Everybody wants the strongest parachute. This is no different. This is what will keep you alive in the first 72 hours where statistically rescue will come. In Ireland, we need shelter and we need fire. Guys, we'll be back to you again next week, and we're hoping to upload more regularly. But this is a serious video, and it's a serious matter. And I know people will comment to the contrary, that blah blah blah, that their stick tang is fine, and etc, etc. What I am saying is, my experience as a survival instructor, I have seen people breaking quite expensive knives on courses, and the only stress that they had on that course was to light a fire. They weren't in the scenario of where they couldn't perform proper hypothermic dexterity tests or anything like that, which you could be in a survival scenario. So guys, let me know in the comments what you think. Good to see you, and we'll talk to you next week.